All right, how's everybody doing? Still awake? Great. Not too drunk yet? My name's Albert Dixon. I am one of the DevOps engineers here at Lumos Labs, and I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what we have been doing with immutable infrastructure. Not the sexiest of ideas, but you know. So I just wanted to go through kind of what immutable infrastructure is pretty quickly, and then our journey to using it kind of again, and then kind of run through sort of what we're doing. So let me get started here. Okay, so immutable infrastructure, what is it? So basically it's just infrastructure that's built from pre-configured machine images, right? And the components are definitely not murdered, but are just nicely replaced during deployments rather than being turned into mutants or changed. So the idea is that you can kind of automate things and keep things infrastructure as code, right? Why might you want to do immutable infrastructure? Well, it's sort of portable, right? You probably can get it onto different clouds and so on. It's repeatable, definitely. It is versioned. It's repeatable. Why is that up there again? You can validate it, so you can run it through various testing harnesses. It's automation ready and repeatable again. The idea, I think, as you can see, is that you have a lot of advantages to immutable infrastructure, right? And that you can easily kind of replace nodes, replace hardware. There's not so much of the scramble and kind of worrying about different snowflakes and how are things configured, and maybe somebody left the company and they took all of their knowledge with them. Okay, so how did we end up with immutable infrastructure, right? So we were starting off. We, of course, as many places, had a chef server. That chef server was managing about more than 150 nodes. That's not too many, but for a smallish team, configuration drift totally happens, right? You end up with many servers that people do not really remember how they were configured. Maybe Chef doesn't run on them. You also end up with a ball of mud with your Chef configurations, and you get to the point where you have these cookbooks that nobody wants to look at, right? They're just this dark black morass. All right, so Kubernetes comes out. Hey, let's containerize all the things. Awesome. We don't even need Chef anymore, right? We could just run Kubernetes in containers. The professor's happy. We've got our little components. A robot got in there somehow. Oh no, maybe we can't containerize everything. That professor looks a little mean now. And this guy is out on the side. So like your routing servers, you probably can't containerize those. Your databases, I don't think you want to containerize those. Maybe you do. To each his own. Got it. Okay, so you still will need some servers, right? So how are we going to configure these? We definitely don't want to go back to the Chef server, right? So maybe immutable infrastructure, right? Well, let's start with the basics, right? So now we can just kind of run through how we are implementing immutable infrastructure here. Essentially, we are using Chef. We have a lot of some Ruby knowledge, some pretty good Ruby knowledge. We had obviously a big Chef infrastructure before. So we can leverage that to start with configuring these instances, right? So, of course, you can use any CMS. It's supposed to be, you can use any configuration management tool, right? It doesn't have to be Chef, right? It just needs to work with something like a test kitchen, right? Because we want to be able to validate these things before they are actually built, right? So obviously Chef works with test kitchen. And it needs to work with Packer, right? As, of course, that is going to be how we actually build the machine images, right? Okay. So, like I said, here at Lumos, we have pretty good Ruby knowledge, so we can leverage a lot of that. So Chef really was a slam dunk for us. As you can see here is a little bit of the code that we have for, this is actually for a Vault server, right? So it's bringing up console, and then it's bringing up a Vault systemd unit. One of the questions we kind of wrestled with was how much do we, what owns the configuration? What piece owns the configuration? So later on, you're going to be deploying these things with, say, like a Terraform. You will bring up these instances, and there will be some last minute, kind of runtime configuration using user data and so on, right? How much do you put there? How much do you put here, right? I think we came down on the side of we just jam as much configuration as possible here, right? So that we can test as much as we can, be really confident that these machine images that we eventually create are doing exactly what we want, right? And then when we boot them up, the user data is like 5 lines of bash code that just gets the IP, right? Okay, so now we need to do integration testing. That will make sense in a second. Okay. So as you can see, we are using Test Kitchen. So this is just like an example of our Test Kitchen config for the Vault server cookbook, right? We are using, and so we're using inspec, of course, since we're using Chef, right? Inspec is going to allow us to write basically server tests in like an RSpec, right? So that then we can kind of like do some test-driven development for for the machine images, right? It makes like a nice sort of tight kind of development workflow for like our little DevOps team. And then we are using Dokken. Now that makes sense. To anybody out there who knows Dokken, the wonderful Dokken, thank you, the wonderful hair metal band.
Yes.
Yes, they are pretty tight with Freddy Krueger. So Dokken then is we want to try to containerize this as much as possible so that we can have a unified development environment, right? And use this in like a cloud CI system. So Dokken is going to be was our way in. So that then we can run these through Travis, right? And have Travis do automated testing and automated deployment of the AMI images, right? So now, Packer. Packer is what's actually building the thing. This is Packer from HashiCorp, not the football team. Sorry to get anybody excited. So Packer, and over here is our Packer config, right? That we have for, this is actually, again, for the Vault server, would be bringing up our Ubuntu, a Ubuntu Vault AMI, right? So now you have all of your Chef config, you have the tests written, right? So that you can, on your laptop, right, test exactly what's happening. Travis is going to actually go run, or Circle CI or whatever is going to go run your test for you. How are you going to actually turn that config into an AMI? Packer's doing it for us, right? It's definitely not the football team. Okay, so why might we want to use Packer, right? There maybe are other tools out there for doing this. I think that Packer is excellent because it is a very easy learning curve. There's one configuration file. They have excellent documentation. It's just, JSON, right? It is very stable and super fast, right? Here we are only creating one AMI, but if for whatever reason we needed to create several, it multiplexes that out and creates, works on several images at the same time. You can have pluggable builders. So like I said, right, if we needed to, so we are in AWS, so we're creating AMIs, but if you suddenly decide you want to move to GCE, you can easily plug in the GCE builder instead of the AWS builder. And it integrates with many configuration management tools, right? Of course, we're using Chef, but we could, go and use Ansible instead, or Salt Stack, or whatever it happens to be. And Aaron Rodgers. Somebody messed with my slides. Okay. So one of the questions that we had at this point was, do we run end-to-end tests now, right? So we already have our testing suite with the code, right? Do we want to actually run some kind of sanity check, right? So, over here you can see where we are provisioning the way Packer works is it brings up an instance, it provisions it with whatever your provisioning strategy is, and then builds the AMI off of that instance. Do we, at that point, want to run some end-to-end tests or some sanity checks? That's possible. We chose not to do that and just, like I said, put all the config as possible into the Chef, and then just run tests there. But it's totally possible, maybe down the line, if we need to do more compliance, right? We have the option to build that in, right? One quick thing, bringing up compliance, and also since we have some security stuff going on, don't forget about security. It's not a huge surface area of attack, but by default, of course, Packer will spin up an instance in your cloud, right? Potentially in your VPC, and it will open up that instance to be, accessible by the world, right? So you want to just make sure that you're not kind of like, just, not paying attention to that, right? Security groups. About it. All right. So again, with Packer, we're Dockerizing again, right? Because we're trying to make sure that we can automate all of this and have it run in some kind of cloud CI platform, right? So we just kind of like came up with like a nice little Docker file for Packer that makes sure that it puts all of the configuration in, just like one little container that then something like Travis or Circle CI can run for us, right? So as you can see, the advantage for us here, right, like I was saying, it's easily portable. Anybody on our team then has a unified kind of like Packer environment that they're using, right? We can run it on all of these cloud CI systems, and we don't have to worry about like where on the file system all of the Packer config and all of the scripts and things are placed, right? Because since it's in the container, we just put everything in slash, right? No problem. Okay, so the last piece is Terraform, right? Now we've built our AMI, we need to actually turn this AMI into something, right? So Terraform, of course, right? So here we just have a little snippet of, this is actually from our Vault Terraform config, right? And at the top, you can see we are getting the Vault AMI that we built using, Packer and Chef, right? Okay, so we can, we use the AMI created by Packer. And for staging, this is for like a production type thing. For staging, we can just give us the latest AMI, right? So that we can have kind of like a quick iteration, right? for production, you want to, here we're ensuring that we pull down version 1.0.0, right? So you want to, of course, pull in a tagged AMI, right? Tag it somehow, right? And so then you want to integrate these things into an autoscale group, right? So it's very easy to kill off to fail over your instances, during a deployment, or if an instance is having a problem, right, you can just, pull it out of the autoscale group, do some debugging. Your autoscale group will just bring up a new one for you, right, off of your pre-configured AMI, so you don't have to worry about whether it's going to actually work, right? Okay. And then, of course, like I said, we feel like you should limit the amount of configuration done in the user data, right? That's kind of the whole point here, is that we have all of that chef code, right? And we have all of those nice tests that we wrote. So why are we then going to create a whole bunch of logic and user data that's not tested, right? Okay, so, all right, almost done. So this is just like a quick overview of like what it looks like, in this workflow, right? We've got the chef code there with, on your laptop, you've got, a nice tight loop with Test Kitchen running in Docker. That goes to Travis. Travis is, again, running the same tests, right? Making sure that PRs and so on and so forth. And then it's also running nightly builds against master. So, we are constantly, checking this configuration code against tests that we've written. Then once past tests, Packer goes ahead from Travis. Travis calls Packer to create the AMI for us. And we have our Terraform code that's referencing that AMI in order to create our instances. So there you have it. That's it. Any questions? Sure.
Are you using a service mesh layer?
We actually we are bringing up some new Kubernetes clusters using EKS, and we maybe will be using service mesh. I know Consul has been rolling out some Kubernetes specific stuff, so that kind of seems like something we can drop in and use pretty easily. Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Cool.